Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are going to talk about something today that's extremely impactful, and you might not even realize why your marriage, why your relationship is the way it is, for the better or for worse. And that's the influences that you've been experiencing since you were a kid. Could be previous relationships. We're going to dissect all of that. He's somebody that helps people fortify their marriages and their relationships all the time. He's got a master's degree in counseling from the University of Virginia, and he's back with us. And with a lot of insight when this guy is here. Paul Zohav joins us on the program. Welcome back, Paul. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Enjoying this brand new year. As you mentioned earlier, and as I mentioned perhaps to you earlier, that there are four major influences that distort your marriage. One, of course, is communication skills, communication and relationship skills. Two, unaware of your love languages. To speak to each other's love languages effectively adds to your relationship. Number three is being unaware of your personality types. These are things we've covered in previous video broadcasts. And today we're going to look at distortions left over from your childhood. For example, at a very young age, we are confronted with circumstances. It could be the way our siblings treated us, the way our parents treated us or did not treat us. We get confronted by conclusions that that arose at a very young stage of our intellectual stage of development. For example, when I was 5 years old, I learned beyond the shadow of my doubt as a 5-year-old that no one cares what I want. Now, these many years later, it still has a certain degree of influence because I would rarely tell my spouse what I wanted, like for a birthday present. And so she wouldn't know what to do. And so finally she got to the point where she said, well, just find yourself something for your birthday. That'll be your birthday present. Because I would fail to inform her what I wanted. Because I didn't really believe that she cared as an ongoing theme from childhood. So we lose twice that way because she doesn't get a chance to express love to me. Because as an acts of service love language, she would instantly go and find it. And I didn't get a chance to experience being loved by her. So there's a double whammy here when things like this distort our marriages. Another example was that one of the couple that I've seen not too long ago, her father never said he loved her. And she tried through the entire duration of her childhood to get his approval without any success. So by the time she grew up to be an adult, she had a PhD in I am not good enough. She wakes up not feeling not good enough, waiting to feel not good enough all day long. And then she goes to sleep that night feeling not good enough to wake up the next day with more not good enough. If she gets an argument with her partner, oh, not good enough. She gets feedback from her boss, oh, not good enough. So this mechanism we have tends to look for corroboration. And every time someone looked at her funny or she was 5 minutes late, oh, not good enough.
Wow.
One more example, there's lots of examples. It turns out in the couple that I saw that his parents cheated on each other. And so did her parents cheated on each other. And her brother is cheating on her sister-in-law right now. So her world is colored and shaped by Cheat Radio 101. She looks for cheating. She turns into the radio station, how to spot cheating at 12 o'clock. It's like NPR, right? Or how to deal with cheating. So, and he walks on eggshells around her because he never knows something he'll do or say that will set her off. God forbid he looks at a waitress for 4 or 5 seconds too long and kaboom. So her radar, you might say, is focused on cheating, which doesn't allow her to see the rest of the stuff. So I'll leave you any questions at this point, Steve, because I have lots to say.
Yeah, a lot of this, as you're talking, Paul, I'm seeing others and their relationships and how it correlates to their younger years. Example, I have a friend, maybe I shared because it's on my radar. It's very recent. Uh, his his wife told him that she wanted a divorce out of nowhere. I mean, he had a little suspicion things were feeling a little different, but was he never expected that to come. Neither did the kids. And as he traces it back, her father did the same exact thing. One day, she I don't know what age she was, maybe 8 or something. Just left. They don't know why he left. He just left. She later reconciled with him after my friend and she got married, and I know the family pretty well. Um, and things were great with her dad. So guess what? Her dad gets cancer. Her dad passes away eventually. And that's where, as he puts it, she kind of went off the rails in her cheating as he traces it back. Now that he knows what's going on. Um, and she's with somebody today who looks exactly like her father. Same ethnic background, uh, into motorcycles. If you looked at, he showed me side by side pictures of the guy she's with, and I know the family, so I knew the dad. It looks like a younger version. Yeah, it's almost you can't deny it. I don't want to call that textbook, but does that come in alignment with what we're talking about here today?
This couple I saw last week, she's 51 years old, and she has been protecting herself from being abandoned for the entire time. She's highly attuned to anything that sounds like abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
And so her partner gets to walk on eggshells.
Yeah.
And two, um, she doesn't trust very easily. So if you're convinced as a child that abandonment is what to be expected, then you are all basically living a relationship with one foot out the door, with one bag packed, just in
Yep.
case they abandon you.
You're on
So
guard.
essentially,
You're on
it's a
guard.
distorted reality.
What prompted her to have that call it a false limiting belief?
Well, had we continued, she eventually chose not to trust him. But I will ask couples, typically around the fourth session, though it could be the third, what did you know yourself as a child? Not good enough. My older brother's smarter than I am. My two parents are too busy operating a restaurant to take care of me. I'm an only child. We get to look at some old code, I would say, that was written by us at
Mm,
a very, very young age.
mm.
So in this exercise I've developed, we've been able to distinguish what's been shaping your reality since forever.
Wow.
It can go back as early as a year and a half. There's one couple I saw. Um, he was the firstborn grandson in his family, and he got a lot of positive attention, though of course he wasn't aware that it was. And so for the first year and a half of his life, he was, oh, grandson, a boy, how wonderful. And then his younger brother was born when he was 15 months old. And his norm, you might say, what his reality turned out to be at that point flipped. Because now his younger brother was getting the attention, much attention that he enjoyed in the first year and a half of his life.
Mm.
So, 1.5-year-olds are not exactly the most intelligent, but he noticed the loss of attention. And for the next 40 years, he acts out, positive or negative. It does not matter. If he can grab attention, he's satisfied on some peculiar level. So, this is something that can go way, way back. In this case, as early as a year and a half years old when his brother was born. And we can rewrite that code, but we have to distinguish what it is that you learned and the conclusions you drew and the coping strategies you developed as a result of your experience at a much earlier age or a previous marriage. In one case, the previous marriage was abusive. And she finally left that marriage, but all the coping strategies she learned to adapt to a person who was abusive, physically, emotionally, domestically, got passed on to her newest marriage. And you can see how that might distort the reality. He doesn't know where the hell this is coming from, but she's behaving like she behaved in a previous marriage.
Hmm. How, when you identify what's going on now versus where the script, if you will, the program that got placed in as a child, and what's going on? I call it connect the dots, how we connected the two. How do you help somebody change the program, change the script, if you will?
Well, first you get to ask the question, how did you know yourself to be as a child? Who did you have to be?
Mm,
I am not, I should be, I have to be. Or the things they told me, like you're lazy, you're worthless. So we learned that we initially distinguished the script that you grew up in,
mm,
and being 5 or 8 or 10 or 12 years old, you bought it. You bought the package. You really didn't have much choice because you struggled to understand, how does my world work? And you pick up cues from the people around you and your teachers and your coaches. One
mm.
coach even called up his family and he said, your son will never be worth anything. His coach called him on the phone. I was quite surprised when he heard that. Uh,
Can I share with you the one that stuck with me? And
oh,
I don't know how to process it, but I always loved cartooning, art, wanted to be a
hmm.
cartoonist, syndicated, came kind of close in my early 20s. But I pivoted over to broadcasting when I was 17. 11th grade, I was painting a painting uh, in art class, and it was a barn, fall scene. It was the wheatgrass leading you into the front door of the barn, and I just having trouble with the sky. It just wasn't coming out right. So Ms. Meyer, my teacher, walks by, and I said, Ms. Meyer, I'm having trouble with the sky. Can you help me out with that? She takes the brush, and it, looks great. And she looks at me and she says, "You know what you are? You are an underachiever."
Oh, there you go. And you bought it.
I bought that, but that came on the heels of me as a small child being large, being bullied all the time. My parents got divorced when I was extremely young. All those things were all, I was already carrying the backpack of baggage. Then she said that. And I think that set me up to try to be a perfectionist, to always be perfect and all of that.
That's what
But
you had to be.
I
That you
had, yeah,
had to be. You didn't have choice. You had to be.
thank you for saying that, and for everybody else, because we don't have a choice. It's just the program is running in our minds. Unless we know how to fix it or confront it with your help, it just keeps going.
And the good news is that it's reprogrammable. It's a necessary mechanism in our heads. For instance, if you said, I think a white Toyota would be a great car. Tomorrow in your town, you would see every single white Toyota on the street because you programmed your awareness mechanism to pay
Mm,
attention to that which is important to you and exclude things that are not important to you. So the good news is be programmable. And when the work couples get to do with me, we get to distinguish old programs and then reprogram them to that leaves them whole and complete. I still remember I was in kindergarten. We were painting easel, and I had the brilliant idea. I'll paint the whole page black and I'll draw on that. But my kindergarten teacher said, you can't do that. And from that on, I wasn't much of an artist.
mm, yeah.
I have tons of examples. I've seen hundreds of couples, and we all have kind of a stigmatism of life. We wear a pair of glasses without knowing it that distorts how we live and our futures until we can recreate and rewrite that.
It's interesting as we talk about this, and thanks for your transparency on it with your life. That these things that we experience as children, the people that call it the teachers, parents, siblings, whatever, not necessarily it's not necessarily wrong what they did. In fact, my teacher and your teacher said those things. I view that as wrong, but many times it's how we internalize it as a kid. That may have not affected another kid. When that teacher said to me, "You're an underachiever," another kid might have said, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. But we're all different. We're all different.
Well, between what we hear and what we think about what we hear can be a vast gap. Um,
Mm,
and because language is secondary to experience. Something happens and then we talk about it.
Right.
World has no language other than the language we add to it. And I imagine there's a student who has bad grades in school. School parent says, "Oh, you're lazy." Other parent says, "You just need some more time to grow up." School counselor says, "Let's go see a school psychiatrist." Psychiatrist says, "You need Ritalin." And stage by stage, 4 different adults looked at this child with the same precipitating event, poor grades. And her teacher said, "Well, there's bullies in school. They don't like to go outside at all." So we have 5 interpretations, all of which are interpretations about this child who has a poor grade. And then we proceed to treat them, quote unquote. So we get to understand that between whatever happens in our interpretation, there's a vast gap that's available. And cheating, for instance, would be in that gap. Oh, he's cheating. I know he's cheating. One couple, he looked at a wedding video of their wedding years and years ago. And in that video, she was talking to his best friend. And he went to, "Ha, you're cheating with my best friend." And he wouldn't accept no for an answer. It's tough. And yet the work I do with couples offers a way out and a way through.
So important too, even in the cheating example, let's say somebody, and I'm going hypothetical here, but let's say somebody has that fear of abandonment in that example that you gave.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's no reason to suspect that their spouse may cheat. They just are always worried, like we said earlier. Is it reasonable to think that if you're with somebody over a period of time, that they're always thinking you're cheating? You may even gravitate toward that because, if you're the other spouse, it's like the conditioned, you're being conditioned at that point.
There's you're talking about the self-fulfilling prophecy.
In somewhat regard, yeah, in a way.
I'd say mostly not. It's
Okay.
mostly, when you tune in, if your mind is a preset radio station, one preset is for cheating, one preset is you're lazy. And so work we get to do is we get to change the presets on your perception. So you say, "I'm in the best relationship on the planet, marriage," rather than the marriage is about to break up.
Right.
We get to create new expectations and we get to live into that. It's enormous freedom. It's just like, oh, we also get to look at the things they've made up about your partner since you got married, because you have interpretations that are more modern, so to speak. And so when you change my partner's critical judgmental to they're caring and deliberate, loving, life changes. Life transforms. We get to rewrite every interpretation that leaves us with less life and replace it with an interpretation, by the way, still an interpretation, that offers us access to more life. Would you rather live with someone who's critical, judgmental, or someone who's loving and caring? And the bottom line is you get to say, it's your choice. Choose your reality. It's one of the powers of being human.
In your experience, Paul, the challenges that people have in relationships, and let's face it, no relationship is going to be perfect, but there are many, many relationships that are very challenged. Would you say it directly correlates to the childhood of the couple, their individual childhoods, what they brought to the table, what they dealt with, and that's really navigating what's going on in their relationship right now?
A lot to it, because remember the noticer, which I mentioned earlier, it's programmable. If you want to looking for a new house, you turn on Zillow. If you're looking for, that love language which you did not receive from your current spouse, therein lies the root to much infidelity. I may talk about infidelity at a greater length in the next session, or perhaps the one after that. But infidelity is a symptom, not a cause. Once we understand that infidelity is a symptom, the next question becomes a symptom of what? Once you can get at the root of what's causing your unhappiness, we can rewrite some code. That's really, I'd say, It's a symptom, not a cause. And when we examine the symptoms, we can rewrite them. That's our power as human beings.
When we talk about rewriting the code, how long does that typically take? How many sessions? I know that you get right to the point when you're dealing with couples. If I remember, maybe 5 sessions is kind of a baseline here. Tell us about that.
Well, we dedicate most of one session to that. And within an hour and a half, you will have access to a whole new level of freedom. The ahas fly. They're just awesomeness. And if you need another round, we'll do it. But it's really, in an hour and a half, you have the opening to a whole new world. I may also point out that sometimes we wear our garbage, shall I put it. And sometimes you can't see my body, but you're sitting with your hands like this while you're listening to your spouse. And that's just how you sat listening to your parents 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. So I say, open up your posture. So you actually are not being little child being berated by mother spouse. So there's body language we get to look at as well. Again, not everybody, but sometimes you can see it. Boy, they hold their body. We hold their garbage in tightly.
Yeah.
So we can let go. One good session on apologies, which I think we've not talked about yet. Maybe that we'll do that next time. And one good session about rewriting old code provides enormous amounts of freedom. Of course, if they want to continue past 5 sessions, they're more than welcome to do so.
Sure.
Sometimes they choose to. They get free enough to want to find out what's next for them, especially empty nesters. You know, they've graduated their children out into the world, and they look over on the person that wakes up to them next in the morning and say, who the heck is that? Because they've been sacrificing for career and family and children for 20 years, and they lost track of who they are for each other. They get to rewrite their marriage for what can often be the next 30 to 40 years of their marriage.
Interesting point there, because when life changes into the empty nester situation, it's a whole different focus. You are focused on your kids, and let's say that maybe there was some challenges in your marriage and you ignored them intentionally, and you put the focus on your kids so you didn't have to deal with it. Now you have to deal with it. I find it fascinating. This stuff is painful. Let's admit it. When relationships aren't going the way they should be going, or if they've gone south already. But with you hearing what people bring to you in terms of how they were brought up, whatever it might be, you got bullied, your parents got divorced, you had sibling rivalry, teacher issues, whatever it is, you get all that information and then make that determination for them. What may be going on here? Does it mean you're always right? No, but if they explain it to you, it seems like what I say, connect the dots, like, oh, that's why that's happening. That's why that's happening. And I'm sure people validate it too.
Well, maybe another last example is that there was an individual who was a college professor. He still is a college professor, but he has awards and certificates. He has tenure too. And he was able to distinguish that he was the 4th brother, and they all treated him as the young, dumb brother. So his life became about not being that rather than being himself. And once he could give up the young, dumb brother theme that's running in the symphony of his life, he could still be a professor with tenure, but he could enjoy his own life because his life was not becoming not that. He got the chance to be who he is without dragging along the invisible past of being the young, dumb brother. I could go on. I've heard hundreds of couples and hundreds of stories, and it's all recodable. It's really just get it out there, look at it, and when you change the language you use, you get a brand new life. And that'll be the theme of our next session, by the way. How to go from a have-to life to a get-to life. A get-to life where you have choice. A have-to life, you have obligation. So maybe we'll leave it at that, and that'll be a teaser for our next session.
Fantastic. This is all this stuff is life-changing for you, each one of us individually, but also when it comes to our relationships and our marriages. Paul, how do we connect with you? I know you do 5 90-minute sessions as a baseline for couples to learn what's going on there. How do we start that process, even starting the conversation?
Well, one, you can see this video over and over again at marriageandcommunication.com. In the video tab, you'll see every video you and I put together and the ones we will put together. And you'll see 25 reviews of at least 25 people. If you go to marriageandcommunication.com, you can contact me through the contact page. And if something's really urgent and I've got to have this, you can call me at 520-297-3085. Even if you're someplace far away. I've helped a couple in Austria. I've helped a couple in Calgary, Canada, Ohio, and Florida. Now, it's preferable to have face-to-face, but when you're deployed in Djibouti and your wife's back in Seattle, this process works well. Marriageandcommunication.com.
Marriageandcommunication.com. Paul, thank you so much today. Great information, life-changing. It really is once you figure out what's going on and what the program that you've been carrying since you were a kid. Looking forward next time we get together.
Look forward to it. Well, I get to be with you another few more times, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome. I appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.